Center for Effective Organizations at the University of Southern California, which I'm sure most of you have heard about. And he's also the author of the book, Employee Surveys That Work. His goal today is to kind of tie everything together, so I'm going to let him just step right up here and get after it. So, Alec, please join me in welcoming Alec. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I have asked that the house lights be up so we could actually all be awake. I think we can see this one better, so if you need to kind of shift your attention, go over there, but anyway. So I've got a little bit of time, less than was budgeted, but that's okay, you know, I'm not complaining. But I want to take you on a little bit of a journey, and for those of you who don't know, what I and my colleagues at CEO do, that is, by the way, an entirely coincidence that the Center for Effective Organizations is CEO, just, you know, in case you didn't notice that before. So what we do is we actually do action research. We do partnering with companies around helping you to solve organizational challenges. I see a number of our sponsors in the room. I see many more future sponsors, so thank you in advance. We always have room for more, as my colleague Ed Lawler would say. And what I'm going to engage with you in a dialogue is around how it is that we can be more effective with workforce planning. And this comes not from sitting in some ivory tower and thinking about things and throwing them over, but actually from all the work that we do with companies like yours. So, in keeping with the theme of the day, I do need to tell you what my favorite bands are. And because I'm an economist, and you know about the three-handed economist, right? On the one hand, and the other hand, and the other hand. Okay, and I've got the mic, so I get to do more than just one or two. So let's conclude. We'll do Peter Gabriel, Sarah McLachlan, Ben Folds, and Ben Folds 5, for those of you who know the difference, Imogene Heap, and the Arctic Monkeys. Okay, so if this tells you how eclectic I am, this tells you how eclectic the work is that we do at the center. Now, question for you. If strategic workforce planning were a musical group, which one would it be? I will make this quick, but I want you to just talk amongst yourselves at your tables. And while you're talking, I want to give you these images to think about. Okay, so take 1 minute. Go ahead. From people who haven't spoken yet today, just tell me your thoughts. What do we have?
OMD.
OMD?
Orchestra maneuvers in the dark.
Why orchestra maneuvers in the dark?
Because that's what you're teaching HR. You're teaching them of how to, you know, it's predictive. It's in the dark. It's something you can't see. So you're getting all of these tools and creating predictions, something that you can't yet see that you're going towards.
Okay, you're teaching HR how to see better in the dark. Okay, what other bands come to mind?
Journey.
Journey. Why Journey?
Well, it's a long process, and you never feel like you're getting to the end of the road when you can really go down the path.
It's a long process. You never feel like you're getting to the end of the road until you get on the path. A lot like there's songs that go on and on and on, right? Another one.
Rolling Stones.
Why the Rolling Stones?
You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. Boy, if I could do that for all of my clients, I mean, that'd be great.
That's not the thing. When security gets involved, it's called painted black.
When security gets involved, painted black. Okay. So I've got my own ideas. We'll save a little bit for the end. This is now, let's all chime in here. What is strategic workforce planning? I mean, I've heard this probably about 150 times today, but I haven't actually heard anybody define it. Nobody? Boy, you're all of a sudden just shy and retiring?
This is the HCI definition, which is what defining and optimizing the workforce. Sorry. Hello? I was just going to say, I think the HCI definition is defining and optimizing the workforce to meet the business strategies in their long-term planning. I think that's it.
Do you work for HCI?
No, I just went to the training 6 months ago. Yay!
Well, congratulations. Okay. Any other thoughts? Well, let me ask you some questions. So first, I'm going to, we'll get a chance. So first, I want to quote somebody a famous person who spoke earlier today. Carl, who said, asked the question, are you solving the problem with more than one lever? So let's ask about some of that. Is talent management part of strategic workforce planning?
Yes.
Yes, why?
Strategic workforce planning is managing your talent in the future.
Strategic workforce planning is managing your talent in the future. Okay. All right. Let's see, anybody disagree with this?
It's not managing anything. It's a plan.
It's not managing anything, it's a plan. Okay, so therefore, talent management is actually superior to workforce planning?
It's different.
Different.
They're,
Okay.
they're linked, they're combined at the end.
Okay, so kind of two parts of a whole. Okay. Is leadership development part of strategic workforce planning? Not so many people just jumping up to say yes here. Anyone want to say yes?
I would say, yeah, it's an action item.
Yeah, go ahead.
Strategic workforce planning says, here's what you need to do in the leadership development space, or here's what you need to do in the talent management space if you're going to have the workforce you need at some future point.
Okay, so if we're doing, I'll reframe this. If we're doing leadership development right, then we're not just looking at the people we have in our stock today. We're actually asking, what's the pipeline? How can we develop them? How can we get the right people in the right place at the right time? Okay, works for me. Any other views?
So a wholly non-academic approach, I would say these are kind of outcomes of how you're going to close the gaps you identify. So those are really, to me, they sound like mitigations. When you're linking the business strategy to what the HR strategy needs to be, you're solving it through leadership development, you're solving it through talent planning, you're solving it through talent acquisition, whatever other mitigations you're putting in place to meet those needs.
Okay, so you're saying you're putting mitigations in place, but so what is the argument about leadership development?
I just said that's one other way of closing the gap.
Okay, so leadership development is a way that you close the gap for what you're trying to accomplish in workforce planning.
Well, that's what you're trying to accomplish from the business, and workforce planning is just translating that business need into some HR actions.
Okay, so workforce planning translates the business need into HR actions. Good, I like it, okay. Employee engagement. Is that part of workforce planning? Strategic workforce planning? For or against? Go ahead, anybody?
I say for. It's the action part, isn't it?
Okay, for it's the action part. So how is it the action part of strategic workforce planning?
Because you need to engage your employees if you're going to accomplish any of your business objectives, correct?
Okay, so you need to engage your employees if you're going to accomplish your business objectives. I would agree with that. But I'm going to go and pick up what was said over there, which is, I think if we're trying to accomplish organizational effectiveness, and if strategic workforce planning contributes to organizational effectiveness, then we also have to think about employee engagement as part of that. So I think they go hand in hand, in my sense. What Mike said. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay. What about job design? Ooh, I heard a quick yes. Where did that come from?
I like the Boeing story here because today it takes something like 150 workers to assemble an airplane, but the airplanes of the future will be, now I lost that, the carbon fiber. And so now they're basically going to be printing fuselages, and it will take 3 people to assemble an airplane. So job design, a big part of what's happening in the future.
Okay. Anybody agree, disagree? Before 2.5 minutes ago, if I had said, is job design part of your job in workforce planning, would you have said that I'm smoking something? Okay. But if I want to be strategic in workforce planning, I need to know not just what is taking place today, but what's going to be happening in the future to the entire organization design, which means you need to understand the job design part of it. And I'll see you that one and raise you one more and say, if you really want to be strategic, that's part of what you need to be challenging yourself and your clients in the business, which is, how is it that we can actually get the work done? Because to ask the question, how do we get the right people, is actually asking, what do we need to do to accomplish the strategic objectives of the organization, of which identifying the right people in the right place at the right time is only one part of it. It's actually how they come together to do the work. So is compensation part of strategic workforce planning? Yes. Why?
Because you have to have the right pricing of the jobs and the market. It's the central part of job description, actually.
Right. You need to have the right price on the job in the market, and on top of it, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm Rory Hogan from Auto Trader. My favorite band is the Eagles, Jackson 5, and let's see what else. I played football at Georgia. How about that?
Okay. So one of the biggest challenges that we have in HR is taking the compensation budget as given. Okay? Now, we don't have permission to go in there and change how everybody's compensated, but if someone's going to say to me, how are you going to get me the right people in the right place at the right time, I'm going to say, how much are you willing to pay for that? Right? So if the problem is that we've got leaders who are setting a price for the talent, that means we can't actually get the right people in there for that price. That's the first thing I'm going to push back on them and say. Is that's fine, we can fill this role, but are you really going to get the performance that you need? Okay. So you need to have compensation be part of it. Okay. So I won't even ask this one. Is organization development. I mean, this all comes together. You need to understand how everything comes together to work effectively in an organization. Okay. You can see where I'm coming down on all this. All right, so is analytics part of strategic workforce planning? Yes. Ooh, no. Oh, I like this. Okay, why not? Oh, hold on. Let's get the microphone. Go ahead.
I see strategic workforce planning as the act of creating a strategic workforce plan. All of the other things that you identified are ways that you achieve your plan. Analytics are a way that you measure your plan. So I would say there is a plan, and then there are a whole bunch of things that you can do, and then there are ways that you can measure it, but they are not the same thing.
Okay. So who wants to argue on the other side? There's at least a few people here who say that analytics is part of this, right? My fellow speakers? I got one. Oh, go ahead.
Tremaine Whitney from the Hershey Company. One of my favorite bands is Kool and the Gang. So I just played a semantics game, and it says part. So that's where I fixated on. It is a part of it. It's not one and the same. So it is part of the process or the outcome of strategic workforce planning.
Okay. So I'm going to do a little bit of, thank you for doing that. I'll give you your $20 later. Prices are sticking low, I'm sorry. So I'm going to do a little bit of semantics around the question of analytics. Okay. Now, and I want to talk about analytics versus systems analysis. Okay. Now, analytics is more than just statistical analysis. Okay. The actual word itself means you analyze. As I'm standing up here looking around this room, I'm doing analytics. I'm looking to see who, heaven forbid's eyes are closing and I'm not keeping you engaged. I'm learning based on your facial expressions. I'm doing an analysis. Okay. That is analytics. It's not just about statistics. Insights that you get when you're doing analytics come from many different sources. And the data that you use when you're doing analysis comes from more than just the reporting systems that you have available to you. Okay. Now, it's often the case that we don't have access to all the data that we need. And so to do the right analytics, you often have to go collect additional data. But oftentimes that data is not in hard-coded format. Okay. I learn as much or more doing interviews with key stakeholders around where are things actually working well in the organization and where they are not. By comparing that to what we're supposed to be accomplishing based on the strategy, looking in the organization design to find out where it is that collaboration is working well and where it's not. Because strategy always fails at the point where we're trying to go across functional silos. go across boundaries within the organization. That's where things fail. Okay? And I need that as part of the data. Okay? So what we get from our systems only can tell one piece of that puzzle. You actually need to have a much broader view of what's actually driving behavior. And being strategic means focusing on what all of this means for organizational effectiveness, not just for how do you fill the roles. So to do this, you actually need to have a causal model of performance. Now, Akil, are you still here? Or did he step out? Oh, okay, well, I'll have to grill him in his absence. Okay, so Akil, just a little while ago, showed you some data that said that there was a pretty strong correlation between employee engagement and performance. Now, can anyone want to tell me a story about why that would be the case? Why would you have a pretty strong correlation between employee engagement and performance?
High-performing units are investing in employees.
High-performing units are investing in employees. Okay. I don't like it when the IO psychologist makes a correlational argument. Anyone want to give me a causal argument? Okay. Why is it that if we have high engagement, we therefore get high business performance?
Because your people are the ones that are servicing your customers.
Okay. So now, when Akil is up there making the argument to his business leaders that they should focus on employee engagement, and it's a key thing that they want to know to be able to drive the business, are there any questions in your mind about the value of looking at engagement as a primary indicator for how well your business is performing? And no, the IO psychologist cannot chime in here. Any doubts in your mind?
No, it may work the other way too, right?
Hold on one second. Sorry?
I was going to say one of my doubts would be it may work the other way too. If the organization is performing well, maybe people become more engaged.
Okay. So thank you. You must have, you probably were trained by a psychologist back in your early years and you just, forgot that and, we're bringing it out into the front now. You actually don't have to go to school to figure these things out. So and I'm the economist here, it's okay. So one of the challenges that we have is that we know that performance leads people to be happy with their jobs. Okay? It's actually true that if people are given the opportunity to perform, if you give them the means, if they perform, they get good feedback, they get rewarded for it, they will actually be happy and engaged. Okay? And so there's this nice virtuous spiral that takes place as you're going along. Okay? But they tend to be correlational. It's that they tend to happen at the same time. Now, I want to know about engagement because if it's in the tank, then something's probably not going well. Absolutely. But as a leading indicator of performance, not so sure. Okay, now I can spend 20 minutes talking about this, I won't. But this actually is, I promised myself I wasn't going to do an advertisement for my book, but since this topic came up, I feel like I had to. So there is more to be had, there's more on this in the book that I have that just came out. But suffice to say that one of the biggest challenges we have when we're talking about looking at the data that we have in front of us is understanding what actually leads to performance for the organization. And to do that, you need to have a causal model of what's actually driving that performance, one like I have up here on this slide. Now, you don't have to study this, but I will say that I use this all the time. Okay? There's no ownership here. This comes out of decades of research and consulting that my colleagues have used and others have used out in the field. But the bottom line is that you've got things that happen at the job level, you have things that happen with the competencies of the people in that role, and you have the attitudes of those people. Now, of those, boy, you can't even see it there. So it's in red, you can't really see it over here. But workforce planning focuses on capability at the job level. That's it. Okay? It focuses on getting the right people into place. But even with those right people in place, you have to make sure the job is designed appropriately, is supported, and that people are actually motivated to do the work. Okay? This is true for every single job, and then those combined, and within that job, you want to get people to actually execute the tasks that you need them to do. That's job by job. And then organizational performance, whether it's at the company level, whether the business unit, the establishment, whatever it is, organizational performance happens when everybody comes together, does their job in the right way, and you get what you need out of the larger group. Okay? So what we're saying is that you've got workforce planning happening all the way at the upper left here. In the business performance, you have to trace it all the way down to the bottom right. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. And if I want to be strategic in terms of helping the organization to get to better performance, I need to understand what makes all of that tick. And how is it that my job in workforce planning can help to do that? And the answer more often than not is I can do it, but only if I'm working hand in glove with the rest of HR and the line to actually look at the entire system and to know what's driving it and what is the role that actually workforce planning can play in that. And one of the most strategic things you can do is to do that diagnostic and in the appropriate place say, you know what, this isn't on me. Even if I could go in there and try to save the day and make the business feel good about what I can contribute in workforce planning, the right answer might be with getting better group process, with getting better training in there. There's a whole bunch of different interventions, and what HR needs to do in every single one of its functional silos, and workforce planning is one of them, is to break down those silos so that anytime we're talking about these kinds of issues, we're coming together as a function to do all the work together and to not put our ego in front or our toolkit just because that's the one that we have, and to focus on what the organization needs to get to better effectiveness. Okay? So my answer, if strategic workforce planning was a musical group, which one would it be? I like to think of the symphony orchestra. Okay? Now, depending on how good you are, you could be the conductor. Okay? Or you might be the first violinist, or you might just be percussion right in the back with a little triangle. Okay? But whichever one it is, if you play the role right and you make sure you're all playing together in harmony, you can get the job done. So, with that, I made up for all the extra time. I'm just saying here. But why don't we open it up and we can, we can
questions,
see if there's some questions. And in the meantime, I will put up the advertisement. So we don't have a lot of time to talk here, but and aside from my book, which just came out, you can see a little advertisement for it there. There actually are a number of different articles and case studies I'm happy to share with people. You can send me an email or give me your card, and happy to do that.
Okay. One question, when are you leaving tomorrow?
I'm leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow.
Okay, so tonight is it? Okay.
So it's tonight.
Alec, thank you very much for sharing. A couple quick questions. First off, you mentioned capability, and first off, I celebrate that you started with the work as opposed to the jobs, because I think too quickly we go to the jobs as opposed to understanding the work up front. You mentioned capability. To what extent have you worked with organizations who are not only focused on developing the capability necessary for the future, but the capacity? Like, do they have enough? Because many people are overworked, arguably underpaid. And so do we have a role in workforce planning to really level set and set up a fair platform so employees have more realistic goals and objectives that they can achieve? The business has better business continuity, less risk and all that. So the notion of capacity being brought into what you shared.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is an issue we deal with all the time. And actually, one of the case study articles, which it's been printed, so I'm not revealing any confidential information here. We did a large study with PwC, the accounting firm, and they were focused on turnover and how they could actually retain their key talent. And they had thought of a number of different kinds of solutions, including deferred compensation to get people to stay longer. And what we found was that it was actually the workload that was fundamentally driving it. Don't have time to get into a lot of the details, but they recognized that they didn't necessarily want to deal with it because you can't go telling the federal government, oh, we're going to change when everyone has to file their tax returns. So it was a harder issue to deal with the workload, but through careful analysis, we were actually able to show them that it was the one they had to focus on. And so they were able to come back. And it's partly because burnout was a huge issue. Any other questions, comments? Great. Thank you.